The time, as they say, had come. The main event for the NXT Championship, Walter against Bron Steiner. And obviously, going into this, it's too early to beat Walter. This could have been the next NXT Big Show main event, the next world title program. But here we are, having said all those things. I was happy to see this because, again, Walter is maybe he's not, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Walter is or should be the biggest box office attraction in all the business. He should be up there. I'm not saying he should be the single number one top star in all the business. He should be up there. I think he is still the best worker for his gimmick and personality in the business. Nobody else does themselves as good as Walter does himself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and you've said that before.
I don't see anything, except for obviously a finish that is called for him, and, he's trying to do the best of his ability, or the, stuff booking-wise that he's not in charge of. When he's in the ring, when he's talking, when he's reacting, when he's working, everything, there's nothing out of place with him. There's nothing that makes you say, well, why would that guy do that?
Except for the name. And the fans were still chanting Walter, it sounded like.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the name was not, obviously, it was, I'm sure they said, well, pick, do you want us to call you Dipshit or Frank or Gunther? Okay, I'll take Gunther, but anyway, he's a veteran, and he can call a great match for a guy like Steiner, and he can hang with him because he's, like we said, Gene Kiniski-like, with that just big, raw-boned physique, as they used to say down south, and those big paws. And he started a little heat on Steiner with a big boot, but Steiner came back with a power slam. Steiner is a good seller, but he has to he sells well when somebody's on him. He sells with facials. He sells with body language. He's not one of these guys who thinks you got to hit me with a baseball bat before I'll go down. He's working, but where he doesn't keep focused with his selling is when he's been selling and then he gets a hope spot or an offensive move where the heel takes a bump or they create some space, and then he immediately comes up fresh as a daisy looking at the heel. Like, what's next? It breaks the flow, and that's what he's got to work on. When he comes out with one of those hope spots or a big clothesline out of nowhere, then boom, he needs to land. Then he needs to look up. Then he needs to shake his head. Then he needs to start getting to his feet, maybe leaning for a second, and then look over at the guy. But that's a transition from, I've been getting my ass kicked, I got an opening, now I'm starting to get my shit together, and the heel can either come over there and cut him off before he's gotten his shit together, or if the heel is waiting for him to come up, then it didn't just happen, boom, we call it going from zero to hero. It didn't just instantly happen. He gets his wind, and you see it happen. So then, obviously, Walter had been working on him, and the shoulder, I can't remember whether he ran him in the post or he had done something, but he tries to press Walter, and the shoulder goes out, and then Walter runs it into the stairs, and they go to the break. When they come back, he's getting heat on the shoulder. And those chops, and Steiner, now he's selling his ass off. I'm not saying he's not a good seller. He just needs to work on that transition from catching to pitching. And then they traded German suplexes and clotheslines. We had a slobber knocker. And that's the gimmick. Walter, do fans know why they call him the ring general?
Some fans may, but probably not that many.
Well, obviously it's a play on, if they had their way, he'd be, the fucking Field Marshal Rommel or something. But the ring general, a guy who was a master at calling a match, at leading a match, in the wrestling days before all this shit happened, was called a great ring general. And obviously, Walter's gimmick and him being of German and or Germanic or Austrian descent or whichever. Yes, der ring general, but this is what he is. He kept it up. He's leading the charge. He kept it interesting. If Steiner does a belly to belly, Walter hit that drop kick at that size and those big legs. Power bomb, 2 count, big pop, does the splash off the top. And again, he's lost that weight, so he doesn't look 300 pounds anymore. But when that big frame lands on you, it looks like a nice splash. And that's what matters. And a 2 count, and a clothesline, and a 2 count. He's really pushing fucking Steiner. Till finally he comes off the top for another splash, and Steiner spears him, and they trade the punches and the chops. Walter gets the rear choke, but Steiner fights out, hits a clothesline, picks him up, presses him, hits the power slam on a 260-pounder, and that tall. And the height on something like that is more, what's the word I'm searching, is more, not more damaging, but is, you got to worry about a guy's height on a move like that more than his weight, because the height causes the weight to be dead weight and unwieldy, and it's harder the taller a guy gets to do something like that to him. And Steiner nailed it like he's done it to everybody else. 1, 2, 3, boom. Great match, amazing performance again by Steiner. Hate to see Walter get beat so early, but I can't see enough of Steiner. I'm amazed at how advanced he is and how he's progressing in front of us. And as I said, Walter is the most accomplished guy at being himself in the wrestling business right now.
Unless they're bringing one of these guys up to the main roster, there was no reason to have Walter lose this match right here, right now.
I don't,
This was the main event of the next takeover or whatever, they call it now. That's what this should have been. Why would they just give this away in a single night?
Well, because we found out after this was so good. Remember I said they tickled my taint and then they gave me the finger. I guess the next program, we can't have a program between the best wrestler in NXT, Walter, and the best rookie in the entire wrestling business, Bron Steiner. We have to have a program between Bron Steiner and another green outlaw goof with an indistinguishable, unknown gimmick named Joe Gacy and I'm sure they probably figured this because the stooge that's with Gacy that never speaks was a hotshot amateur too, right?
Parker Bordeaux, was that his name?
Or was he a football player?
No, he was a wrestler.
So he's a hotshot amateur, so something will go on there. But he's greener than Steiner is. So instead of putting Steiner in a long-running program with a veteran that can get the best out of him and teach him on the job, they beat the veteran in their first meeting, and then they segue into an angle with 2 guys that are greener than pepper trees, one with a rotten gimmick. Because on the screen, as Steiner celebrated his victory, suddenly appears his father, Rick Steiner, saying, "Hey, I want to congratulate you, son." But something's the matter. What's the matter? They pull back. Steiner's tied up. He's in a cage. He's tied up with ropes, and there's Joe Gacy and his stooge Harlan there. And the teases that Gacy has been talking about, your family, your father, whatever, now they've got... This was so fake looking. Number one, I don't care if Rick Steiner was in a coma. These two couldn't have fucking tied him up. Secondly, it's fucking preposterous. The match that they just had, Steiner and Walter, the last thing you want to do after they've done everything they can to put some credibility into the wrestling business, do you want to hit people with something that's so completely fake and phony that it spoils what they've done? But that's where this goddamn comedy writing crew of fucking dickless perpetrators can't understand the difference. The guys go out there, beat themselves up, put some credibility in the thing, and get themselves over, and then the writers that don't have to take any bumps force shit like this on them that they think is entertaining. It just makes everybody laugh at what they've tried to accomplish and punish their bodies for. So I'd like to say once again, fuck you to the writers that are apparently going to sabotage the hottest rookie in wrestling. Because now, instead of Bron Steiner being the NXT champion and a tremendous athletic prodigy, he's the guy standing there with his dick in his hand while these two unknown dipshits kidnap his father, and nobody believes it anyway because it's done in such a phony fashion. But somebody apparently heard me say last week, well, why couldn't they just give Bron some wins? And then instead of just blurting it out because the Steiner thing has been revealed because of the Hall of Fame, if they weren't going to reveal it from the start, let's Bron Steiner be going right along until finally he wins something big or something, and then one of the heels can get to him by going to his family. And then if he wanted to, he could reveal that he didn't want to trade on the name, but he's proud to be his father's son, blah, blah, blah. So they do the phoniest version of that they can possibly come up with. Why couldn't, in a few months after he's reigned as NXT champion and gotten some more victories, why couldn't they have given Bron Steiner an award, best newcomer in NXT, rookie of the year, whatever, and have his father there to present it to him? And then the heel that he beat, Walter and his stooges, in his last program, come out and have an issue with him being awarded that because everybody knows that he's the best, blah, blah, blah. Interrupt the presentation, get in a beef. Bron Steiner looking good. But then suddenly, as he dispatches Fabian and Marcel with clotheslines, Walter grabs a chair, swings it at him. When he turns around, Bron Steiner ducks, and Walter lays out Rick Steiner with a chair shot to the head that you can hear from here to fucking Los Angeles, which busts him open, and there's chaos, and people are running into the ring, and the heels are run off, and Rick Steiner is taken to the hospital with a concussion, which, because he's in his late 50s, potentially causes a stroke to where it's touch and go, and fucking Walter's immediately suspended for going into business for himself. But Bron Steiner leads the campaign to reinstate him so he can get his hands on him. Or they can just kidnap Rick Steiner and tie him up and put him in a cage. That was the end of the show.
Sure was.
You know, Brian, the problem becomes they just can't get a good idea, but even if they do get a whiff of one, they can't keep it.
No, they can't.
Just can't keep it to save their life. And you know what else you can't keep sometimes? Sometimes you can't keep your hair. And I've got to think, because Rick Steiner, we've mentioned this since we've seen him recently. Rick Steiner lost his hair. And if only Rick Steiner still had his hair, I'm thinking that he would still have the superhuman strength of a Steiner, and he wouldn't have been able to be tied up like that.
You think it's a Samson-like situation where the power comes from his hair?
I think that's it. I think it's a Samson situation without the Delilah. Because he didn't have anybody cut it. It plummeted from his head over the many years. And now he's hairless and strengthless and can be tied up by job guys. Folks, don't let this happen to you. Don't go bald and be tied up by job guys with indiscriminate gimmicks. Folks, I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen to all of us at one point or another. You're going to get too tall for your hair and your top of your head's going to be sticking right up. 2 out of 3 men will experience some form of hair loss by the time they're 35 years old. And I guess by the time you get to 70, that's 4 out of 3 men. So by the time not only are you going to lose all your hair, you're going to lose some of other people's hair too. More than 50 million men in the United States suffer from male pattern baldness. And I'm not even going to get into the countless women that suffer from female pattern baldness. It just starts at the other end of your body and works up to the head. Whereas the guys start losing the hair on top of the head and work down to the other end of the body. The whole thing meets at manscaping, but we're not going there now. Folks, Keeps offers the only 2 FDA-approved medications that can prevent hair loss. They offer the generic versions of both of those, and that's why the treatment plans are so affordable and typically half the cost of pharmacy prices. You go in a pharmacy, you say, hey, give me some pills that'll grow hair on every part of my body. You think how much they'll charge you? Why, they'll rake you over the coals. And then sometimes the hair on your knuckles doesn't even grow at all. But Keeps is going to put that hair straight on your head where it belongs. They've got more 5-star reviews than any of the competitors, especially whenever they grow hair in the Tokyo Dome. Convenient virtual doctor consultations, medications delivered straight to your door every 3 months, 24/7 or 24-care-7 support. 24/7 care and support line, a network of expert medical advisors, prescribers, care specialists, and kibitzers that will support you in making your hair goals a reality. Everybody, when you sit down at the start of every year and write down the goals you have for your hair, the number one on the list should be keep it. Treatments start at just $10 a month. They've got everything that your hair needs, but remember, prevention is the key. So act fast, folks, when you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss. Go to Keeps, Keeps, Keeps.com/JCE to get your first month of treatment for free. That's Keeps.com/JCE. Get your first 25 or 30,000 hairs on us. Keeps.com/JCE.
25 or 30,000, really?
Well, you know how many hairs you got on top of your head? It's countless. When you start losing them, you need to lose about 20 or 30,000 of them, and then you start noticing. And every once in a while, 4,000 or 5,000 you can fill in on your sideburns. Did you ever try to count your eyebrows?
I have not. Have you?
That takes a while.
Have you done that?
Well, back in the days before cable TV in some hotels and there was no cell phones and you really needed things to do. Keeps